Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. Now, my guest tonight is Rissa Miller. She's an editor, author, herbalist, seer, and storyteller. Her storytelling expertise stems from extensive research into the era of esoteric history, including ghost, witchcraft, cryptids, and folklore. Now, Rissa believes the most enduring stories teach us not only about humanity's past, but also give reasons to reflect on our own present beliefs and realities. Her approach to the paranormal involves in depth historical research layered with firsthand accounts. Now, inspired by her first ghost experience in York, England, at age 8, and it happened after a tour, Rissa Miller became a history guide when she was 15. Her first gig was with at or the Colonial Complex, still operated by York County History Center. She went on to study at New York University's Tisch School and was an award-winning editor at the Baltimore Sun earlier in her career. So let's go ahead and get started, and we'll be talking to Rissa.
We live in a reality of phantoms and monsters. They exist among us, and sometimes they win. Even the devil was an angel once. The world has its own rules, and these rules are not human. Some of us seek answers to the origin and existence of cryptids and the unexplained. Join us as we venture beyond the known and accepted boundaries. Welcome to our nightmare. I think you're going to like it.
So, before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel was made possible by clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by you sharing our programming. If you're watching us on YouTube, super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated, and you can click the dollar icon located in the chat below the chat box. The Buy Me a Coffee link and other donation links are also shown in the description. Thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you found interesting in the presentation or our chats with guests, and make suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to again thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, for their commitment to me and the channel, as well as acknowledge Christina and Kevin at Elevate Souls Productions. Now, if you're in the chat and you have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each of these after my presentation. So, my guest tonight is Rissa Miller, and I just read the bio. Hi, Rissa. How are you doing this evening?
Hi, Lon. I'm doing very well, thanks. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I wanted to get you on. I had mentioned a lot of this investigation at the Yorktown Hotel to people who regulars on the team and as far as in Facebook and other social media platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So there were a lot of people interested, even a lot of local people that were interested in this investigation. So we're going to put you on the spot tonight and let you tell us a bit about the Yorktown Hotel, why you were there, how you and I got together and did this investigation.
This sounds great. So I'll start at the beginning. So the Yorktown Hotel is a absolutely beautiful landmark hotel in York, Pennsylvania. In 1925, the folks of York City decided that they wanted a grand hotel. And the city of York was like, sorry, we don't have money for a grand hotel. And as it turned out, the community crowdsourced the money to create the Yorktown Hotel. Back then it was the Hotel Yorktown. But either way, basically that means that the community found their own in 1925 $1.75 million to build this stunning grand hotel. Now, why did they want it? Because Lancaster and Harrisburg both had grand hotels and they could host conventions. And York wanted to be able to host conventions as well so that they could bring commerce into the city. It's very practical. And you had to have a grand hotel to do that. So they built the grandest hotel that still exists in York today. And it was the tallest building in the city for most of its life. I think if you include the flagpole, it is still the tallest building in York City. So that said, just as a quirky side note, because there's so many quirky things about the Yorktown, there was a goat awarded, a taxidermied goat, awarded to the crowdsourcing team that raised the most money back in 1925. And if you are local to the region of York, PA, or if you want to travel to York, PA, you can still see this taxidermied pygmy goat in the Yorktown. It was lost to history for a little while, but it was refound and placed in the lobby bar of the current Yorktown Hotel during the last renovation. So you can still see the pygmy goat sitting there smiling down on you while you enjoy your breakfast or cocktail. So all of that said, the hotel has hosted many, many dozens of celebrities, politicians, sports stars, musicians. It has been an absolutely a beautiful success story for this small city. And of course, as all old hotels do, it does have many stories of hauntings. In fact, it has hauntings that are kind of affectionately known by the staff. Um, which is kind of a funny thing to say because, when I say haunting, most people think scary. That's not really true at the Yorktown. Their oldest one, no, I'm sorry, one of their oldest ghosts there, that was called the Spirit of Hospitality because people liked seeing and experiencing him so much. It was considered lucky when he would appear. It's probably not lucky for him that he ended up there, but it was his home. He did live there. So I'm getting sidetracked. Let me finish answering your questions, Lon. How did I end up there? So after the pandemic, I already knew the Yorktown Hotel. I was born and raised in York, Pennsylvania. And I knew of the story of the Spirit of Hospitality, rather, as a kid. And I moved away and I came back in 2020 during the pandemic. And 2022, I decided to start my own ghost tours in downtown York. So of course I had to, in addition to finding stories and finding firsthand accounts and doing many, many, many days and hours of research on buildings, I had to include the Yorktown because it was a just absolutely classic story. It wasn't even open yet when I started my ghost tours. It underwent a massive renovation for several years, and it only reopened, I believe, New Year's Eve of 2023. So it was closed while I was initially doing the first of the ghost tours. Yes, there it is, the absolute gorgeous jewel of downtown York. Like I said, if anybody is local and you can get there, you can walk through the lobby any old day. Just walk right into the lobby, have a cup of coffee, look around. It's definitely a fantastic sight to experience. So, and you can even have a ghost experience right there in the lobby. And I'm not even kidding. So, that said, the staff of the hotel has been absolutely fantastic in supporting my ghost tours. And they've been incredibly, encouraging. And when the renovation happened and they reopened, the current general manager said that people who had worked there before and who knew the Spirit of Hospitality wanted to know where he was. Apparently, he hasn't been around as much. Finding and retrieving missing ghosts is not actually part of my usual job, but they missed him. They basically want to know, did he hate the renovation? Did he leave? Like, what was the story behind the missing spirit on the 8th floor? So Lon and I actually met through Beck Lawrence. Isn't that right? I think so. You knew Beck somehow,
Yeah,
and
Beck.
she
I
met.
was in her one day. Yeah.
Yep, you were in her store, and she mentioned some program I think I had done there or something I was doing. And we met online for the first time. And it turned out we already both knew a lot of the same people. So yes, it's ironic because you lived and worked in the Ellicott City area for so long, and I worked there for so long as well, and our paths never crossed. I was in fact a ghost tour guide there. I still am. I still work at the museum in Howard County, and do presentations and research for them as well. So all of that said, I wanted someone who I knew would do a fantastic job with an important building like the Yorktown Hotel. And I reached out to you to come with me to do the research on the space. I didn't want to just do it by myself. I really wanted somebody with years of expertise to come into such an important old building in the city. And on July 10th, we went, and we explored every single floor. We stopped in every nook and cranny of the Yorktown Hotel. And the Yorktown was great in supporting us through the entire process. They connected us with their historian, and she gave tons of data and other reports. I also used newspapers.com to try to verify and find obituaries and things like that as part of the research. So, did I finally answer your whole question?
Yeah, you did well. Yeah, that was Wednesday, July 10th of this year that we met up, where we did the on-site investigation. And it's funny because I was born and raised here in Hanover, which is 16 miles just
Yes.
west of York.
Yes.
And I had never been to the hotel. And I've been to York a lot over the years. And of course, even when I lived down in Baltimore, and I was up here a lot too. So, but I had never been there. And of course, when you mentioned that it had been renovated, and I found out you were doing all these tours and such. And when you gave me the opportunity, asked me to help you or come in there and do the investigation, I was more than willing to do so. And it was nice. And I tell you, I was very impressed with you. And what your research and everything that you were all about. And I wanted to do this right. So I contacted my colleague, my friend Delise Cook, who is in the chat tonight. She has a remote viewing team, the Beyond Horizons remote viewing, and I gave them the task of actually conducting the remote view session. And I gave her the target, and she went through it, and then she did her and her team did the reports, sent them to me. And I tell you, I thought that it really, really gave a good perspective of what was going on there. Put us in the right frame of mind.
I absolutely agree. I think the thing that stuck out to me immediately, because I had been in the Yorktown many times, was the drawing from the rooftop. And I recognized it immediately. And I know that you can't see it from the ground, and it's not an easy thing to get a photograph of, even from the top. So the minute I saw it, I was like, yep, that's the spot. Even when there were descriptions of the curtains and some of the other details of the rooms when we were in there, and some of the rooms were open, we saw them. We saw the curtains. We saw these exact details exactly as that team described them. So that was kind of phenomenal and really verifying.
Yeah, she did a separate RV of the location. She started out with the roof, and the balustrade around the roof was exactly the same design that was there. So she picked up on it well. And other things she was telling me, and she even identified an energy.
Yes, she
that
did.
met us when we got to the top floor.
Indeed. So, the way I found out about Jane was from the staff of the hotel. And I'm still getting fascinating reports about Jane that you haven't even heard yet.
Oh, good.
Because, Jane is a very busy spirit resident of the Yorktown. So, I think the first thing to note about Jane is that she didn't die at the hotel. Um, she's a walk-in, and she's very, she has a very young, playful energy. And Jane met us in the rooftop lounge, which the whole top floor of the Yorktown was originally an apartment for the general manager to live in, but during the last renovation, they switched it and made it into a bar that has both an indoor and an outdoor component. It actually has a whole separate menu from the other bars. So it's kind of cool. It's really its own unique entity. And Jane apparently loves it. I mean, also the whole community seems to really love it as well. So, I mean, what not to love? It's a bar on a rooftop, on the highest rooftop in the city. It has the amazing views. It's absolutely gorgeous to be up there looking down onto old downtown York. So, that said, yes, she immediately identified Jane, who at that point I didn't have a name on, but several of the staff members had reported some very curious activity, including a spirit that rang themselves out for 1,000 Pepsis. And yeah. I was like, I guess they were thirsty. I don't know. But and then did things like moving bowls in the kitchen when the chef was trying to plate soup, or glasses shattering in the bars. The Yorktown did everything to investigate these as best they could. They called the manufacturers of the bowls and the glasses to see, like, is there some technical problem with these things? They checked into all of those aspects, and there were no problems. All they could keep coming back to is, what is this ghost doing to us in the hotel? I think one of my other stories collected about that it has Jane's signature all over it, was turning off all of the lights in the downstairs. And there are lights on many different electrical switches down there. It's not all on one switch, but it all went off all at one time. There was no blackout. There was nothing else going on. I guess Jane just wanted to make herself known that, she was there.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because her energy, she was very persistent with us. I mean,
She was very persistent.
as soon as we got on the elevator, I guess we spent a half hour or so up there, and the bar itself is on wheels. And I think you went to the restroom, and I came back and I saw that bar move. And it was, and we were sensing her the whole time. I sensed her as soon as I walked out of the elevator.
So I also had an EMF meter.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember, and it
Yeah.
was going off like crazy, not just around like the electronics or anything, but it was definitely hitting. And she never did show up though on my visual imaging software. It's just the EMF meter for her.
So when we got off the top floor and we got on the elevator, we went down to the next floor.
Yes.
And it was interesting because I didn't really expect her to follow us down there, quite frank with you. But let's see. I'm looking at my notes here. Yeah. I think we went on the eighth floor. You talked about Mr. Abrams and the cigar, because you and I both picked up on that cigar odor when we were walking. And look, the hotel floors, they're set up like a venerable hotel floor plan. You got one long hallway that goes past all the rooms, and you go into a shorter one, and that's about it until you get into the areas where you get into on the elevator. But the floor plans are all the same on all the floors until you get down to to the hospitality floors or into the ballroom or into the lobby. But it really has a lot of energy to it, and I picked up on several things. It was like that odor of burning wood. Like there may have been something to do with a fire. I was feeling portal activity on descending floors. And I think Jane was using this portal to move back up and down from floor to floor. I can't be positive of that, but one thing that Delise had mentioned to me, and you read, and she had it in the report was, we did kind of feel a heightened sense of the past while we
Mm-hmm.
were there, and Delise had mentioned in her report that the number 507 was significant to Jane,
Mm-hmm.
and she had named Jane. And, I believe then it was probably referred to a room number. So, but I mean, I'm skipping on things. If there's something you want to add in there, go ahead.
Well, I can always circle back.
Okay.
If you, I'd be happy to talk more about the cigar salesman and his
Right.
story too.
Yeah, well, go
So,
ahead and talk about that since that was on the 8th floor we had already
okay.
been on.
So yeah, I think one of the things that struck me is when we got to the 8th floor and I could smell the cigar smoke. First of all, I was so happy to know that he was there, that I could report back to the hotel staff that their famous ghost that he had not indeed left during the renovation. That for whatever reason, the day that we were there, he decided to show up. I don't know if he was expecting us or I don't know, but he decided to show up that day. And I was absolutely delighted to be able to report back to them that the spirit of hospitality was still with them. So, because he has even been cited through the decades as well. So, the story behind him, I was able to find and verify him with my brain, an obituary. He was a cigar salesman in life. He was unmarried and he lived at the hotel in the 1950s. So he thought of the hotel staff as his family because he was always there when he wasn't on the go selling cigars. And he was known as Eugene. His name was Herman Abrams. Eugene was his middle name. And sadly, he had a heart attack in the lobby and he was taken to one of the hospitals here in town in York. And he died at the hospital. So unfortunately, he did pass away tragically, but it wasn't long after his death that he started appearing back in the hospital. So I'm sorry, back at the hotel. My mistake. And it was fascinating because he was seen coming and going from the room that he'd always lived in. He was seen coming and going in the elevator that he normally used. To this day, they have 3 elevators in the Yorktown now. 2 of them are the old original elevators that have been updated to modern code. And then they had to install a 3rd one to be compliant with the modern laws. So the 3rd one, if you ever get to ride in it, is way bigger. I was told it had to be big enough to fit a modern hospital stretcher in case of an emergency.
Okay.
So that said, he rides in the old ones. And there are folks to this day who still get into the elevator and they don't press the number 8, but the number 8 lights up as if someone was going back to the 8th floor. So I guess when Eugene's coming and going, he uses the elevator still to this day. Yeah, I actually kind of love that he doesn't walk. He doesn't use portal energy. He takes the elevator to go back and forth to his place. So the 8th floor has since been redone as suites. So his original room, whatever it looked like, would not look like what it looks like now, because the old hotel rooms were a lot smaller. So I would imagine if you see him coming and going on the 8th floor, it's going to be right through a wall if he's going back into his old room, because that is not the same as it would have been historically. The floor plans up there are completely different now.
Okay,
So,
well, you were, and we were talking about that Jane never showed up on any of your software or any of your imaging software on your phone,
no,
but we were picking up some energy.
We were absolutely. The one that really stuck out to me was the spirit that was standing right next to the one maid. I've thought about that so many times. I remember thinking, like, I guess that's someone who's just here with her or for her. So I thought that was really interesting because there were others that we saw walking around, but that one maid has someone who was right next to her, working with her, following her in and out of the rooms as she was cleaning. I don't know if like she had a family member or something, but I thought that one was super fascinating. And it's the only time using that software I've ever experienced something quite like that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Well, we got down to the 5th floor.
Yes.
And as we got closer to the area where possibly a room 507 would have been located,
Mm-hmm.
it was pretty obvious that by that time it was now a housekeeping storage room or a
Yeah.
closet.
Yeah, it is now a storage closet.
And so, now to me, I was picking up things, you were picking up things, but there was just a deep sense of dread and pain when I got up to that door. And basically, I was standing there in front of the door, and I was literally touching the door and the original molding, and I'm sure that was the original molding uh, around the door. And I got the sense or the word violence.
Mm-hmm.
Which was interesting because at the exact same time I said that, Rissa said violet.
Violet.
Now, we both received that message, though I believe that both violet and violence were relative terms in those circumstances. As I stood there, and I was telling Rissa this as we were going through, as it was coming to me, I instantly sensed a female figure. Short, petite stature, wearing a one-piece dresser uniform. She was African American and had very short, black, shiny hair. And she was in distress and pain. And I saw a stream of blood flowing down her left leg. Now, I then saw her lying on her right side with her legs extended out of the room into the hallway. So I told Riss, I felt her pain. And I felt shock as well. And I guess I literally felt her dying. I think this was the nanny that you had talked about earlier on. And I truly believe that Jane was trying to tell us the nanny's story or Violet's story and her demise. I mean, I think that's why she was so insistent on getting us down there on that 5th floor.
So I did go and try to research obituaries and any historic records I could, but there was nothing to be found. So one of the things that we had discussed was that if a woman was raped in 1920s, especially if she was a single woman, it would probably never have been reported to the police. Right. To this day, sexual assaults often are not reported to the police, but back then, for it to happen to a single woman, definitely, historically speaking, very unlikely that would have been reported. So no matter where it happened or the nature of the crime, it's unfortunate, but this is a reality. So the story that we matched this with was a story that has only ever a haunting that has only ever been reported by children. So Violet, I've been calling her Violet. Violet only appears to kids. And what we kind of sort of sensed was that she was never married, but she loved children, and that she'd always wanted her own family. So in the Yorktown, when children are distressed or upset, or there's a baby that won't go to sleep and is fussy, it has been noted that a nanny ghost will appear and soothe them, and they will go to sleep. And, I always think it's interesting because I had my first full spectral apparition experience as a kid, and I didn't know to be afraid. I had never been taught to be afraid. So I just thought it was a thing that happened, and I rolled with it because my parents had told me that ghosts were real, and when they come along, that's just a thing, that nothing to be afraid of. And so I think that when the kids do see Violet, they don't know it's a ghost. They just think, oh, it's something that's here, someone that's here to help me. And indeed, I think that is how Violet appears to people. To kids, she's a helper. She's a kind spirit. And it's very sad to think that she had a terrible ending to her life. Whatever the nature of that might have looked like, whether it was a miscarriage or some kind of violent crime or some kind of illness, any of the above is a terrible ending. Any of the above is a possible scenario. And what struck me about the imagery you were getting was that in the history of women in general, it has always been that horrible crimes committed against women are generally not reported and never receive, what's the word I want to say? The retribution they deserve. And if that was Violet's story, that's genuinely heartbreaking. And it would also kind of make sense that Jane, who is a saucy spirit, would want us to know what happened to Violet while we were there, that she would bring us to that place and show us that story. So I have an add-on to Violet's story for you. Okay. She only appears on the 4th and 5th floors to children, just in those areas. Those are the only reports that I have personally. And First Date Paranormal came to York, PA. They took my ghost tour and they stayed at the Yorktown. And the minute they walked in off of the elevator on the 4th floor, which is where they requested to be put, they were especially interested in Violet. This was after you and I's investigation. Mm-hmm. Their equipment turned on in their bags and started going. A spirit box started talking. Their cameras came on, their EMF meters, everything came on the 4th floor the minute they stepped off the elevator. Now, they had been to another haunted location in York, and their stuff picked up nothing. But in the Yorktown, the minute they hit the 4th floor, everything came on. So I did ask them for an update before this interview, but they didn't get back to me yet. So I don't know what they've found on those recordings yet, but I'll definitely update you when I have any information.
Well, I'm glad you told me all this, because that kind of verifies a lot of what we experienced. And
yes,
I make these assumptions based on my intuition and ability to interpret spirit energy. So, at the time of our investigation, I hadn't been able to gather any other intuitive evidence for the location, even remotely, other than what, that Delise and her team had given. That instant connection with a terrible act just then suddenly turned off, because since that investigation, I haven't felt anything, which is, for me, is kind of unusual. There's several people in the chat who I know me and know that a lot of times I will continue to pick up on things, but I haven't picked up on anything since our investigations. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of unusual. One thing I did want to mention, I did pick up at the time, it was either 1927 or 1928 that Violet's death occurred.
It would be right after the hotel opened. Right. And in 1928, it's interesting to note that is when the Hex Hollow murder happened, and everybody would have been crowded around downtown, around the Yorktown, when that trial was going on. Just interesting side note.
I never even thought about that, but you're right.
Yeah. Well, the history pieces together very nicely. The Strand Theater, which is part of the Appel Center now, also went up in 1925, just like the Yorktown. And they also have some very interesting ghosts there, too.
Wow. Yeah, Delise put in there she wants to hear the updates when they come in, and I will definitely send them to her.
Oh, yeah. As soon as I know anything, because I know they left all their equipment on all night long, and they said it was active. Cool. So, I'm super eager to hear what they said as well. So,
well, now we did go down to the other floors after the 5th floor, and I don't know how much we really picked up on. We were kind of looking through at the windows and everything. You were giving me the history of the area around the hotel, and I was taking all that in. But the place has a lot of energy.
It
It really
does.
does. It's palpable. Uh, it comes in waves, I feel. So, but what's your assessment of the investigation itself?
Mine, I thought it was very successful. We answered the question that they had, and we were able to put a name to both Jane and Violet. And
Right.
the staff was delighted to be able to name their main spirits. They and Jane is very interactive. When I was last at the Yorktown about a month ago, I stopped by just to check in and say hello. I'll stop and get like tea and chat with the staff. I had more reports from Jane. Apparently, there was a young lady getting ready to stock some plastic cups that people were going to drink out of, and they were coming up off of the pile and bing, bing, like flying across the counter at the young lady who was trying to stock them behind the counter. So
Where was that at, in the lobby?
it was in the area right behind the lobby bar, where like behind the scenes area.
Okay.
But yep, she knew to call her Jane, and she was like, Jane, stop, and then it stopped. So yeah, and then I spoke to another member of the staff who works in the upstairs lounge, and she said that she was up there by herself getting ready for service, and she said that she suddenly knew there was somebody else there. She knew it. She had the strongest sense of being watched. And she said it wasn't bad, but she was for a minute a little jangled because she hadn't heard anybody come and the elevators hadn't opened. And she said, "Is it Jane?" And apparently, like something like rattled around behind the bar, and she just took that to mean yes, that it was Jane. And so she was kind of like, "Okay, well, Jane, I'm just going to keep doing my work." And nothing else happened with Jane at that time, but evidently Jane is getting to be known by the staff there and answers to her name in some way.
Wow. It really feels good when you do an investigation like that, and then things start falling into place with
Yes.
witnesses and such. Um, yeah, that's yeah. And folks, I didn't know much of this at all. I mean, Rissa didn't tell me about it. She was saving it for the show, I imagine. But yeah, I feel very encouraged by that. In fact, I think you and I are going to go down there another time.
Oh, I would love
Check
to.
it out. Yeah.
I would actually love to take a spirit box in and see if Jane will talk to us, or if Violet would like to talk.
Right.
I feel like you and I were trying to figure out Jane's connection to the hotel. I remember us wondering, how did she choose to come there? Like it was like a thing that we were really, really stretching to figure out, because she seems contemporary. Like she knows what Pepsi is. And I realize that Pepsi goes back about 100 years, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, most of the ghosts and in spirit interactions I have, they don't ask for things like that. So
Yeah.
the fact that Jane rung herself up for Pepsi's, it means to me that she lived in a much more modern time. So
Yeah, that's what I figured. I did go back and try to do some research with the name itself and anything related to York. The only thing I really got was a woman who had probably been married there at the hotel.
that's a
Uh,
possibility. It could have been
at
a link to a happy memory.
Exactly, and she enjoyed the place and definitely went back after death.
Hmm.
But I think she may have actually lived uh, west of York. I mean, there were two areas that I concentrated on. One was not far from Pittsburgh, and the other was a somewhat near. But I really couldn't pinpoint any information. So maybe one day we'll get some information about that.
Yeah, I did also search on obituaries on the name Jane, and I would like slot it out by like 5-year time spans trying to find her, but nothing. And the Yorktown's historian also checked into the name for me, couldn't find that either. Like I said, of the three of them, the only one whose name we can confirm for sure is Eugene's. Like I said, we found him, we found his obituary, we found like information about his life. But as far as Violet, if indeed she is who we think she was, and she was an African American woman who worked at the Yorktown in the 1920s when they first opened, there might not even be employment records of her anymore. Unfortunately, the Yorktown does have some history where in their early years, like in the 1920s and 30s, African-American employees were not treated the same, and they had to use separate stairways, separate bathrooms. This is just part of the history of America, let's be honest.
Mhm.
But it was also the part of the history of the Yorktown. And if Jane was a walk-in, that makes it way harder to pin down who she was.
Absolutely.
It makes it very difficult. But I like that she reacts to her name. I like that when the staff call her Jane, she responds. So, one of my ghost tours, Lon, you're going to think this is funny. I told Violet's story, and a gentleman looked at me. He goes, "I have a really fussy 3-year-old. Can I just drop him off for her?" I was like, I don't think the Yorktown would appreciate that.
No, I doubt it. So, folks, if you do have questions for Rissa or about the investigation or me or whatever, please put them up in the chat, and Christina will get them to us. So kind of tell the folks a bit about what you do now, Rissa, as far as your presentations. Like I told you, you're the busiest person I know. I mean, you seem to be doing something every other day, or
Just
and
about, yeah.
yeah. You live down in Howard County. I mean, you live close to Baltimore, and you're up here all the time doing
My
these.
family is still in York.
Okay.
So that's my connection to York. So
Right.
I live in York part-time. I hang out with my parents. They're getting older, and I'm able to provide assistance for them. And yes, I absolutely love Howard County. There's some super fascinating stuff down there. So for many years I've been a ghost tour guide in Ellicott City, Maryland.
Right.
And talk about a haunted place. That place is just like elbow to elbow with ghosts.
It's off the charts. I mean,
It is.
I sent you investigations I've
Mhm.
done all around the area, and yeah. And in fact, Rissa's going to be back on in about 3 weeks, I think.
That's about right.
And we're going to be talking about that area, in particular, Hell House.
Hell House is a fascinating spot. It used to be called St. Mary's College, and if you know anything about Maryland, you've heard of Hell House.
Absolutely.
Hell House has been. It was even mentioned on the show Supernatural with Dean and Sam and their car. So it was really an amazing research project. I spent a year doing it. I worked with a lot of historians. I actually had a research assistant because there was so much to wade through about the region and about St. Mary's College in particular. So,
well, yeah, I saw one of your presentations that you did at the Howard County Historical Society.
Yes,
and that was very interesting.
Yes.
There was stuff I never even heard of before, and it's funny because I worked across the river, right directly across the river from Hell House, from St. Mary's, for 20 years.
You worked at the mill, right? That has its own
Yeah,
ghost
I worked at
stories.
Simpkins, and they, they're no longer there. I mean, they tore everything down. It's, it's part of the state park now. And you sent me pictures not long ago of the mill. What's left there? It's like there's nothing there. I mean,
two concrete platforms that kind of like branch out over the water, and that's it. And it's covered in graffiti, layers of graffiti. So yeah.
Well, I'm going to come down there one day. You and I are going to go around here, and I'm going to tell you a few stories about.
I would love to do that.
On Pistol Road and a few other places.
Oh, yes,
there's a lot of
please
weird
do.
Stuff
that would be so much fun. I see. How do you see them? The software. Let me look at the software I was using. So I have a paid subscription to a program on my Google phone called GhostTube, and I have that as imaging software. They do have other things that they offer from GhostTube, but it was suggested to me by some folks in Gettysburg who really love the technology, and I have found it to be pretty useful.
We're going to have to get to Gettysburg, too.
That would be awfully fun. I would enjoy that.
Jose Sanchez asked, how did you see them on the software.
That's what I
Yeah,
just that was the
yeah.
software I used. I do not have an infrared camera. I have used them in my life, but I don't have one right now.
And Delise, thanks for allowing my team to be part of this. It was awesome. And look, Delise has helped me out on several investigations, and it was valuable information that
Mhm.
she gave us. And remote viewing is pretty cool.
It
You know?
is. It's not one of my like areas of expertise, but it her and her team were right on the money at the
Yeah,
Yorktown. It was
yeah, they were.
impressive. Oh, I wanted to mention one other thing that I picked up from one of the staff members.
Mhm.
I just was peeking at my notes over here on the side. So you and I walked past the ballroom, and the ballroom is actually phenomenal. The windows themselves are worth driving to York to see because they are so amazing. And the ballroom was completely restored. They had to, this is going to be a funny thing to say, one of the biggest parts of the restoration was stripping the walls of cigarette smoke. So,
I remember you telling me that.
yep. Then, so that was one of the big parts of the restoration that they did in the most recent one. So, all of that said, you and I both felt like there was some residual energy there, but the EMF meter wasn't picking it up. My equipment wasn't picking it up. And we both felt like it was dancing or celebrating or something.
Mhm.
Turns out one of the staff members said that she was in the Yorktown alone, literally alone, and right before they reopened. And she said that she heard like dancing and chattering in there. And the minute she went and turned on the light, it stopped. And then
Yeah.
when she turned her back to walk away, it started again. So that's there. What we talked about, it was there.
Wow. Delise said Lon's imagery and emotional connection to her was strong. Well, yeah, I mean, it is amazing how we picked up on it. You picked up on it, I picked up on it. I mean, it was just we were drawn there and she was directing us right to it.
Oh yeah. No, Jane is very interactive. I usually when I walk into the lobby, I just start talking out loud. I'm sure people think I'm crazy, and that's fine. I'm just like, "Hi, Jane. How's it going?" And then I walk in and say hello to like the living people. But yeah, I talk to all of my ghosts. So
Well, Delise put up here, I did ask, and I didn't tell you this, but Delise told me this before we did the investigation. I did ask if we could go back and speak to Jane, and she answered, sure. So that was encouraging. And
yeah.
look, she met us as soon as we got up there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was quite evident. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw that, Christina. Coincidence about the Pepsis, and I'm drinking Pepsi. Yeah. Well,
Yeah. A little product placement never hurts,
yeah.
right?
Let's see. Delise, did you find a grave listing line? I did find some grave listings, but I don't know if it was her. It could have been, but there wasn't anything definitive. I know Rissa looked into it as well.
Yeah, I couldn't
But
find anything that I was sure about.
yeah. Let's see. Jose Sanchez, is infrared technology used in detecting specters whenever you are on an investigation? This is the first time I've ever used it. The only technology that I have ever used, because I'm kind of basic, is our recordings, or EM or EVP recordings, and I've had several EVP recordings, which have astounded me over the years. But that's about the extent of what I use as far as any type of technology.
Well, I want to share with you right around the corner from the Yorktown, there's a store called House of Flowers. And one of my ghost tours this year, we brought Dover Paranormal Investigations along. And it was a different ghost tour because we stopped outside of 4 places. And they had their voice spirit boxes, right?
Mhm.
And which are the voice phenomenon.
Mhm.
Outside of House of Flowers, everybody started picking up. There were several of these boxes going on a woman's voice. Now, I knew the ghost story there, and I knew who she was, and she started talking to everybody. And then she was saying, she was telling us how lonely she was. She was asking what happened to the man who had been courting her. She was asking what year it was. And then when we turned to leave, like, we spent a lot of time talking to her, interacting with her. And when we turned to leave, all the boxes rang out. Please don't go. Please don't leave me. I'm so lonely. Don't go.
Hmm.
And she was still hitting on those spirit boxes a half a block away. It was kind of
Wow.
heartbreaking. In fact,
Yeah.
the owner of House of Flowers, a woman named Catherine, said, I'm really sad that she's that lonely. She bought a spirit box so that she can talk to her and they can have conversations during the day.
That's interesting. Kevin asked, was there any extra activity while the changes took place?
As far as the construction, that's actually why we ended up in there.
Yeah.
We ended up in there because they couldn't find Eugene and nobody had seen him. And he used to appear in spectral form regularly. As far as I know, he has not started reappearing in spectral form, but he has started reappearing as an aroma of cigars, and on the 8 lighting up on the elevator. But for whatever reason, he's not appearing in spectral form. I can't explain to you why he's chosen not to. But I can tell you what he looked like when he did appear in spectral form, because I've had so many people tell me. He was always wearing a suit and tie and a hat. He was very well dressed. He was very well groomed and manicured. And he was always carrying his cases of cigars.
Interesting. Well, and that being said by you, this is one thing had thought about before we went in there was, they did the renovation. And normally when people do renovations on a location, the activity picks up, but it did entirely the opposite on this location. It was almost like it was suppressed somehow. So,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
definitely interesting. Although it did somehow, the renovation brought Jane in,
yeah,
and suddenly it got a
yeah,
lot busier.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah,
Jose,
maybe
go
she's
ahead.
like, I like the chic new rooftop lounge. I think I'll stay.
It's pretty nice up there. Jose asks, why do you think apparitions many times are missing either feet or a face? Well, I can tell you, uh, full body apparitions are very rare. It takes a lot of energy to manifest like that, and quite frankly, when I do see a manifestation, it's very rarely anything beyond the head and shoulders. And I have seen a few, especially at Gettysburg. I've seen a lot there, but it just takes a lot of energy. You have any comment on that?
Sure. My very first experience was with a full body apparition, and he definitely had a face because I can still see it in my mind clear as day.
That was
Um,
in England?
in England, I was a little girl. I was going upstairs in a restaurant to use the bathroom, and a teenage boy appeared. I could see his pained expression on his face. Like, I could see exactly how he was feeling from his body language. And I actually ran downstairs to go get help because I thought, oh, well, I need to get a parent or someone to help this young man. And when, of course, I came back with my mom, he was gone. Turns out his name was Marmaduke Buckle, and he had hanged
What a
himself
name.
in that room.
Oh,
So yeah, he was a special needs person, but in the 1600s, that was mistaken for witchcraft, and he was scheduled to be put to death, and so instead he took his own life. It was a super tragic story, but he had a face. I saw all of him. How
interesting.
many times in my life has that happened? Very, very, very few. I
Yeah,
can tell you in
it's rare.
Ellicott City, there are people who see faces, and there are particular apparitions whose faces show up regularly. I can think of names. So it does happen, but it's the least common in my experience paranormal phenomenon as far as hauntings that I know of. It's much more common to be touched, to smell, to hear, and to sense, at least in my experience.
Yeah, and when we do the next show, we will be talking about full body apparitions as well because I had quite an experience also. Sir Wolf asks, "Hi, Lon. Is there a way to move them on? Why are they still there?" That's a touchy subject. Quite honestly, unless they're causing a problem, and look, it's all free will. If they don't want to move on, they won't move on. You can kind of assist them in doing it. That's how why I learned how to remote view because quite honestly, that it seemed to be a good way or a good conduit to helping these energies move to another level. But just like anything else, there is free will.
Hmm.
So if they don't want to go, they won't go.
No, that's been my experience as well.
Yeah. Jose, might murmuring behind a wall cases as if many people speaking in a cafeteria be linked to multiple spirits or something else.
It could also just be a residual.
Yeah, it's probably mostly a residual, I would imagine. I hear people or get reports of people hearing a lot of voices at one time, and I do believe that is residual. Just like when I had my first encounter at Gettysburg when I was 9 years old. I mean, all of that was residual, in my
Hmm.
estimation. I
Gettysburg
was,
has a ton of residual.
yeah, even in videos and stuff of spirits and apparitions and manifestations, it's 99% of it is residual. It's just like the up on Hers Ridge, people have taken so many videos of the manifestation around the cannons,
Hmm.
part of uh, Kemper's brigade. That same apparition, I've been seeing pictures of that for 50 years now. It's the same thing. It just shows up to different people or the right conditions.
Hmm.
Any other questions? Oh, Lon, what's your favorite cocktail? I can't drink anymore because of surgery I had. But my favorite my favorite cocktail was actually what I called a snake bite, and that was a Yukon Jack and lime juice. So there you go. Take it for what it is. Matthew, I believe that the half manifestations have to do with reconstructions. So seeing a half spirit might be something to do with the floor that no longer there. If you could see below the floor, maybe we'll see a pair of feet. I guess it's possible.
Maybe, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Delise, I think I wrote in the report I thought Jane was a model for clothing. She would have been very chic. I did associate her with style of
Yeah.
the period where she was in. She just seemed like that she was stylish.
And the Yorktown is honestly an upscale place, and it
Yeah,
always was ever since day one. So if she was married there or dined there or whatever, she would have been a person of some privilege. So that makes sense.
Sir Wolf, but so many of them seem lost or unaware of their situation. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, it does turn out like occasionally, if you're lucky enough to get some type of communication with them, um, with me intuitively or through remote viewing somehow, um, many times they don't even know they're dead. They don't even know they're in another period of time, and the
That's
energy.
that's what I have found too, Lon.
Yeah, it's hauntings are basically an energy trying to communicate with the living, and it kind of turns out to where you're scaring the hell out of the living, and they don't know what's going on. So that's what causes the investigation to be conducted. Um, but I think they're in some cases they just have a lot of questions and they just don't realize that they have passed on, and that can last for hundreds of years. And I've done a lot of investigations, and Delisa knows this. I've done a lot of investigations in England. I mean, though distant investigations, and it was all done by computer or laptop, but the RVs were done, you know, and a lot of the energy that we have gotten in investigations in that old world setting are just like that. They don't realize they've passed on.
And that's when you're talking about the intelligent spirits, the
Exactly.
interactives. Because yeah,
Exactly.
I don't think residuals have a feeling about it. I feel to me like they're somebody once explained it to me as a scar on time space. And I thought that was one of the most articulate ways to describe a residual I've ever heard of. So if you think of time space as an entity around us, just like, I always say I have this scar in my hand from my curling iron. You can look at it and it'll look different from different angles, but same with a scar on time space. That's why they tend to sync, or they always do the same thing, or, they're always standing next to the same kin. And it's just a scar on time space.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a good description. I had to steal that one. Jose Sanchez, do you think that ghosts might be capable of traveling to other dimensions and back? What do you think?
Me? I mean,
Yeah,
I
Rissa?
honestly have no idea. I mean, anything's
Yeah.
possible. It's definitely possible in terms of physics for there to be multiple dimensions. I'm not a
Yeah.
physicist. I'm not going to claim to know a lot about that, but I think anything is possible unless you can rule it out.
Yeah, and people know I've been involved with this thing in Chicago, and I think there's dimensional travel involved with that. So I believe more and more as we do these type of investigations, either with cryptids or energies or alien beings or whatever. I think for the most part, there's some type of interdimensional, some type of portal type uh, thing involved with these. Of course, we can't definitively prove that at this point, but maybe one day we will. But it's a lot of people talk about it. People talk about it more and more as time has gone on. They can't really come up with a plausible explanation as to why these things show up and disappear and quickly.
I mean, most people
So
can't come up with explanations of why they do the things they do every day, never mind why
exactly.
somebody else is doing something. So it just stands to reason that there are certain things beyond our comprehension for now.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you. Okay, folks, got any more questions?
Somebody said they liked the movie The Others. That's one of my favorites. I love it.
I like that
think
movie too.
it's one of the best ways to explain ghosts that I've ever seen.
You're
I
talking
think
about the
it's really
Nicole Kidman movie?
Nicole Kidman movie. Yeah.
That, I was kind of hanging on the edge there, thinking that might be what happens at the end, and of course it did. But it was, it was a very good explanation of energies and
One of my very favorites. I love that
yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah. So, Rissa, why don't you tell the folks how they can contact you? Some of the things you're involved with.
Sure.
Oh my God, we'll be here for half an hour.
Oh,
I'll keep
it. I'll keep it quick. I promise. So you can find, I have two different websites. One is called teandsmoke.com. So tea like the beverage and smoke. That is my divination website. And so I do tea leaf reading, smoke reading, tarot. And that's how you can find me there. And that also has matching social media on Instagram and YouTube. And then I have a site called hauntedpa.online. And that's my ghost tour site. So that has a matching Instagram and YouTube as well. And on that YouTube, I just tell stories condensed into 1-minute reels about other people's ghostly experiences in the state of Pennsylvania. So as far as where to catch me live and in person, I'm mostly done for the year or sold out. I have 2 more events coming up that are not sold out. They are both my unmarried monsters of Christmas. So I talk about the spooky side of the Yuletide, things like Krampus and the Mari Lwyd and Yule Cat. And I have one coming up tomorrow night in Lancaster at the 9 Collective that there's still tickets for, as well as on Friday, December 20th at the Haunted Orphanage in Gettysburg, which is a wonderful place to give presentations. Last time the ghosts were so active, I was giving a talk there. They were jingling bells and you could hear footsteps and there was so much activity. It was like 2 shows for the price of 1. So it was. My January is not super busy. I am doing an Edgar Allan Poe Poetry Day on Poe's birthday at the Hanover Serpent's Key in their new location. They are moving to a bigger place. So Lon, you'll have to check it out. But yes, she's expanding. And so I'll be doing a dark poetry workshop and then an open mic night. The open mic night portion is free. My ghost tours don't start up again in Maryland or Pennsylvania until April. But until then, I will be doing various presentations inside for the months of February and March. But you can check my websites or my social media. I do have a Facebook account that if you just send me a friend request, I will let you follow. Or I do post stuff on my websites and on the Instagram pages as well.
And Rissa is also now part of the Phantoms and Monsters 14 research team, and we're very glad to have her. I need someone else to with me around the area who can look into things like this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and I really enjoyed us working together, and I want to do it again. So
I'm looking forward
absolutely,
to it. And I can't wait to our
yeah,
next talk in a few weeks about St. Mary's College, also known as Hell House.
yeah,
It's going to be a good one. I have so much to say about it.
yep.
It was such a great project. And, honestly, I think it's going to be something I'll eventually write a book about because it's such a rich, rich topic. And there's still so many questions and gaps, even after a full year of me and an assistant researching it. There are questions I still can't answer about that property.
Mm. So, Rissa, hang on, and I'm going to go ahead and close the show out, and then we can talk a little bit afterwards. So, folks, I want to thank you all for coming on here and watching and chatting. If you donated, it's truly appreciated. Your support was definitely what makes all this happen. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you do have a sighting or encounter report and like to be considered for the personal report show or for the Phantoms and Monsters blog, just email me at lonstrickler@phantomsandmonsters.com. So until we meet again, stay healthy, stay safe, have a nice weekend, and good night.